Hey there, in the next few minutes I want to talk to you about what I refer to as supporting documentation as part of a real estate closing. And when I say supporting documentation, really what I'm talking about is this form that you see right here. And this is actually sort of a confusing subject if you're working in multiple different states, because most of the states in the US do require this, but what you're looking at right here is Michigan's version of that form. And for example, this is what Hawaii's version looks like. And you'll notice that in Hawaii, it's called a conveyance tax certificate. In Michigan, it's called a property transfer affidavit. This is what Arizona's looks like, and it's called an affidavit of property value. This is what it looks like in the state of Maine. It's called a real estate transfer tax declaration. This is what it looks like in Nevada. It's called Declaration of Value. So all these names are like kind of similar, but yet different. But basically all of these forms are doing pretty much the same thing. And the purpose for these forms is when you close a real estate deal, you're obviously going to be sending some documents to the county to be recorded. And when you send that in, the county itself is obviously going to be aware of what you're doing. And they're going to be aware of the fact that, oh, okay, this property is now being sold and now this new person is the new owner. So the county knows that, but the city or the township or the parish or whatever municipality that property is located in, which is also, by the way, the entity that sends you your tax bill every single year, they do not know about it because they're not always on the same page with the county. And sometimes the county will sort of sync up their data with the city, so eventually they'll get on the same page. But as of the date of that closing and in the immediate future after that, that local city or township or municipality is going to have no idea who the new owner of this property is unless you get this form filled out and send it in to them. And let's just go back to the one right here in the state of Michigan. And in this case, this form needs to be filled out by the buyer, so by the new owner. They would have to fill out all this information, the street address, the county, the date that the property was sold, just all this basic information, and then they would have to print their name here, sign it at the bottom, and date it. And this right here is just an instruction sheet explaining what you have to do. If you look at some of the other states out there, like Arizona, for example, this one is pretty much the same if you go through it. A lot of the same information has to be put in here. Pretty much all these forms are going to come with an instruction sheet explaining what you have to do. This particular one looks like it has to be signed by both the seller and the buyer. If we take a look at Nevada or Maine, you'll see a lot of similarities. And essentially, once this thing is filled out and signed by the appropriate parties, you're going to put it in the mail, and then you're going to send it to the local city or township assessor. And keep in mind, that is different than the county assessor. So you don't want to send it to the wrong place. Or in some cases, you might even have to send it to like the local tax collector or treasurer for that city or township. And this is an important piece because it's usually a necessary component of most closings. But what makes it really difficult to explain in this kind of format is that every single state works a little bit differently. In some states, it's purely the buyer's obligation to make this happen. In other states, it's both the buyer's and the seller's obligation to do it. So that's why whenever you do find this form in your state, assuming it's required in that state, you'll definitely want to make sure you look at the instructions that come along with this form, because that should explain essentially who's responsible for getting this thing completed, and then where you're supposed to send it, and then how soon you're supposed to get it there, and all those details. And the thing to remember is that even if this is the other party's responsibility to get done, if you are handling this closing yourself, if you're taking on the responsibility of doing all the documentation and the paperwork and making sure that the right things go to the right places, if that's the situation you're looking at, then this really should be your problem, and you should make sure that this gets done correctly and filled out correctly with all the right information, and then signed by the right people and then sent to the right place. If you were going to be working with a title company or a closing attorney, they would be handling all this stuff for you. But if you're taking the step of saying, yes, I will handle this closing in-house, then I think it's effectively your job to make sure this gets done right. So step one, whatever state your property is located in, make sure you know whether or not you have to fill one of these things out. One way to figure that out would be to call a local title company and just ask them, hey, does the buyer or seller need to fill anything like this out and send it in? Yes or no? And they can tell you in a flash. Or another way to find out would be to just type in the state and then just start searching for this type of document. So for example, we could just try Nebraska real estate property transfer statement. And it looks like There's this right here, and it looks like in Nebraska they have this there as well. And as you can see from the form, it looks like a lot of the same stuff we'd normally have to fill out in all these other states. We could also try to do something like that in New Mexico. Just kind of picking words there that I think might pull up this type of form. And it looks like they've got one here in New Mexico as well. So as you can see, every state seems to have their own little version of this. And what makes it tough is that you don't always know what the name of any given state's form is going to be. And they're all different. And I wish they would get on the same page so it's just easy. So I guess you could definitely try to search for these forms on Google. You may or may not have luck finding them. If you don't find it, I wouldn't necessarily assume you don't have to do it. If you really can't find the form, then it's probably worth calling up a local title company or real estate attorney and just asking them quick, hey, if a property is being sold in XYZ state, do you need to notify the local municipality with any type of form or affidavit, just so they understand what to do with the property taxes? And one other thing I'll just note is that really the purpose of this form is to notify that city so that they can start redirecting the property tax bills to the new owner. So if you have a unique situation where you are doing seller financing on a deal and you've got it set up so that you as the seller are going to continue to pay these tax bills, but then you're going to charge your buyer to reimburse you for that each year, if that's the kind of unique arrangement you have where you still need to be the person paying these tax bills, in those cases, you may want to hold off on this until that loan is paid in full and everything is officially in that new buyer's name, because at that point, that's when those new tax bills can start going to them. But up until then, if you've arranged for yourself to pay those bills, then you may want to hold off on doing this. So just keep that in mind. If you're doing a cash transaction where instantly that property belongs to this new buyer, in those cases, then yes, you'll want to go through the motions of getting this done, because if you don't, you're going to continue to get those tax bills. But if you're doing seller financing and you want to hold off on that until it's paid off, then you may just want to put a bookmark here and come back to it after that loan is paid off and you're ready to have those tax bills not going to you anymore. So that's the quick run through on that. Unfortunately, I wish it was a more standardized form that's the same everywhere, but it's just not. So it can be a little tricky, and if you are not able to find the answer just by searching on Google, then definitely give a local closing agent a call and just say, hey, how does this work in this state? And they should be able to help you out.